Welcome back to the Primitive Camping and Bushcraft podcast. My name is Chris Spear, and I'm going to be your guide to enjoying the great outdoors. So, who actually enjoys making their own rope or cordage or string in the woods? No, not me. I don't. It's very time consuming. It takes a long time to actually make it. But if you hang in there, at the end of this show, we're going to discuss how to do that. But up until then, we're going to just discuss cordage today. All right. Cordage is another name for string or rope. And this rope is going to be used to make other tools or conveniences while you're in the great outdoors. So, and whenever I say while you're in the great outdoors, I'm really talking about while you're out there camping. And essentially what it is, if you're going to leave your house with some gear and you're going to head out into the woods, you're going camping. Plain and simple. You're going primitive camping. Now, and you're going to practice some bushcraft skills or some survival skills while you're out there, but you're going camping. And I'm just going to throw that out there. And if you don't, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about that. Whatever. But this rope's going to be used to make other conveniences and tools around your camp. So it would be best if you carry some variation of cordage, because cordage is hard to replicate in the wild, and very strong cordage is very hard to replicate because one is extremely time consuming, and two, it's very challenging, and it's kind of difficult to make out of natural materials. Now, that's not to say that you can't do it. I've done it. I've made it, and there's other things out there that will allow you to make cordage out of natural materials. So I'm not trying to discourage you from making natural cordage. Everybody needs to practice it at least once. Everybody needs to make it. So, but still, while you're primitive camping, you do not want to spend all your time making rope when you can be doing other things to enjoy your time in the great outdoors, such as fishing. I love fishing, and I would love to be out there practicing fishing, and not practicing, but just actually fishing and catching something to eat. Making primitive rope is actually easy, but like I said a while ago, it's extremely time consuming. String made from yucca or the inner bark of a willow tree can be extremely robust, and certain roots from pine trees and various vines can also be used as cordage in a pinch. So in a little bit, we're going to talk about making natural string, but I want to go ahead and break down a couple of the other things that most commonly are brought with you, and that is going to be paracord or, bank line. So typically I'll carry 100 feet of paracord or a roll of number 36 or number 48 bank line with me in my pack. Now, paracord is handy because it contains 7 strands of nylon string inside the braided sheath. And that braided sheath has 32 individual interwoven strands in it. So typically, or theoretically, if you cut you off 5 feet of paracord, you can pull those inner strands out of the paracord and then tie those together, and you have essentially 35 feet of fishing line or 35 feet of something else, line to go ahead and use for some other task or duty or whatever. But paracord's amazing stuff. I mean, it is exactly what it was used for, is for parachutes. And it was developed in the early, 40s, whenever they were developing the jumping out of an airplane for World War II. And these guys risked their lives with experimental stuff. But, a lot of common items that we use today was developed for the military that either became, commonplace to be used, or it was like used for the military and it phased out with something better, and then they offered it to the civilian world, and that's where we get it. But paracord is amazing stuff. And it's actually called 550 cord. And what it is each strand is going to hold 550 pounds. It's got 550 pounds tensile strength, where anything under 550 it'll hold up or support. Now each one of those individual strands in there holds up to 35 pounds. So they got 7 strands in that, and then the sheath itself is like, it holds up to, I forget how many pounds it does, 50 or 60 pounds, something like that. So it all adds up to where it will support 550 pounds of weight. And I believe that is correct. If I'm not, somebody leave a comment, let me know. But anyway, you have, if you cut off 5 foot of paracord and you tied them all together, then you're going to have 35 feet of fishing string, and a 5 foot case that you could use for other things. And that casing I've made paracord. I've taken, what was it? I made a video on my YouTube page, and you might want to check it out, where I made a bed. And I took a 26 or 15 feet of paracord. Yep, that was it. It was 15 feet of paracord. And then two 15-foot sections of paracord. And I took the inner strands out, and then I wove a net with the intersections. And then I took the sheath and I used it to tie each side of the paracord to a bed frame. And I actually made a bed out of this paracord, and it was actually extremely comfortable, and it actually supported my weight, and I couldn't believe it, when the 35 pounds interweaved and everything. And that was doing the overhand knot, and so I'm sure it would have been stronger if I had actually done the actual fishing knots or slip knots or whatever it was there. But it supported my weight. Now, out of this paracord, you can use the inner strands for various different tasks. You can use the outer casing for tons of different tasks. This sheath or case is impressive, when you use it in conjunction with a jam knot, especially for the handle of a buck saw. When you're using the jam knot, it holds extremely tight. And so if you don't believe me, you can go watch the Bushcraft channel, Dan Wowak or whatever his name is. He does an extremely good, a very good demonstration on a buck saw using the sheath of a paracord and the Canadian jam knot or the jam knot or arbor knot or whatever it's called. And it does a very good thing. But I forget his Bushcraft platform, but I know his name's Dan Wowak or Womack or something like that. All right. So here is my absolute favorite use or cordage to actually bring in the woods with me is tarred and twist bank line. This tarred and twisted bank line has 340-pound breaking strength. All right. So typically it's giving you more bang for the buck already. And for nearly the same price as 100 feet of paracord, you can get 125 yards of bank line. Think about it. So 100 feet to 125 yards. Now, bank line comes in pounds or hashtags, as people call it today. So, and pounds, for example. So you got pound 36, pound 48. So that's so forth. The pound or the hashtag designation is the diameter of the line, and each roll of bank line is sold by the pound. So the smaller number designations equal thinner strings, which equivalent to long with equivalent length. So number 36 bank line is perfect for your outdoor tasks. And, so the smaller is going to be less tensile strength and it will break. But you can still, I have done a bow drill with the real thin stuff. The 20-pound line, stuff like that. I've done bow drills and everything, but I use bait line for catfishing. Everybody down here in South Mississippi does. It's called trot line, TROT, and we use the tarred twisted bank line or trot line to set lines for fish. It's easy. You go ahead, you tie one in on one side, you come out, you make a stage with an overhand knot, leaving a loop, put the loop through the eye of your hook and slip it around, put it on there, and you're good to go. And you just do 5 or 10 hooks across this line. Go back to the beginning, bait your hooks up, come back, and, you catch catfish like crazy. And one of the demonstrations that I used we filled up a boat slam full of catfish on a catfishing trip doing trot lines, and put that picture in my original manuscript of the Primitive Camping and Bushcraft book, but it did not get used. But in South Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama, trot lines are everywhere. If you get lost on the river in South Mississippi, you would have enough cordage to build you anything that you want, because people come and they go out there and put their trot lines out, and then they either forget where they put it or they just don't even bother to come back. You would find you plenty of fishing hooks. You would find you plenty of trot lines out there. It's sad to say, but, it could work. And combined with a prusik knot, and you can adjust where you put these hooks and where you put these lines anywhere and everywhere you want. Now, I use bait line for catfishing. I use it for bow drills. I use it for guy lines on my tarps and tents. And growing up, the only thing I knew it by was called trot line, like I was just explaining a while ago. Now, I was explaining how trot line is the method of fishing where you run a line across the water and, you string yourself up 5 or 6 trot lines, and you're going to have enough fish you're going to have enough food. So when it comes to cordage, the actual bait line is going to give you more bang for the buck. And, paracord is versatile. So I do recommend, and I personally do this myself, I do carry 100-foot strand of paracord in my pack whenever I head into the woods camping. But I also carry a roll of bank line, and because for $15, you're going to get, 400 and something feet of bank line as compared to 100 feet for $10 of paracord. And so I do recommend carrying both. And the reason why is because there's going to be instances where you're going to need the strength of the paracord for certain tasks. But then again, the bank line, I have used it for everything. And sometimes that's the only thing I've ever brought with me in the woods is the bank line. Or the trot line is what I'd like to call it, And so this stuff, is amazing, and it is stranded. It's 3 strands of nylon that is twisted together, and you can actually take this nylon from this cordage, and you can fray it up, and you can make fire tinder out of it. You can actually make fishing string out of it, if you wanted to make regular fishing string. And so, the options are endless. You can do whatever you want with these cordages. But regarding cordage, paracord and bait line are the 2 kings. And there's people that will say paracord and then bank line, and then vice versa. But they are the 2 kings. Both are lightweight. They're extremely versatile and can be used for more than one purpose. They're relatively inexpensive, but as I stated before, you get more value out of the bait line. So now that we've discussed those 2 common types, there's natural cordage, and when I say natural, I'm talking about sisal or hemp or whatever kind of rope, and you can use that. They've used these natural ropes for centuries, and they've made it, it's not till recently in the past 100 years or so that this nylon and these artificial style cordages have become the king. But before that, all rope was made out of some kind of fiber, plant fibers, some type of plant fiber. Now, at the beginning of this podcast, I told you that we would get into some plant fibers, and what we're going to be using is the palmetto, what I use to make plant fiber based cordage here that is real strong and very is prevalent down here in the South, especially on the rivers and stuff like that. Is palmetto is everywhere. Now you're not going to use the leaves because the leaves are actually very brittle, but you can use the leaves for other things. It's perfect for weaving together like a basket or something like that. But as far as making a strong, durable cordage, you're going to actually use the stalk. You're going to use the stalks they're about 3 to 4 feet long, and you could cut the leaves off and cut it at the bottom down there. And then you take some kind of a hammer, like if you brought a axe, you use the backside of your axe to hammer into a stump or something like that and break them fibers up, and then just pull it down and break it into its smallest fibers that you can make. And then you want to do the reverse wrap. So you'll take the fibers and you'll do the reverse wrap and twist and make your own cordage. Now you can make it small enough, and doing this method is strong enough to make fishing string. Now, one of the best kinds of cordage that you're going to be able to make out of natural cordage is going to be with the yucca plant. That's going to be one of the strongest. But you can actually make it with anything. You can make it with grass. There's the grapevines here in South Mississippi. And I've seen them all the way up through Tennessee and Georgia, and all in the South. So I'm assuming they're pretty much everywhere in the eastern woodlands. That's everything east of the Mississippi River. But so these grapevines, as they grow up into the trees, they start shooting out. I don't know if it's roots or if it's just additions to the vines, but you can cut those off, and they look like when you walk in and walking into the woods and you see these things hanging off of the vines, they look like string. And you could cut them off with your knife, and then you weave them together. You don't wrap them or twist them or anything like that. You just weave 2 or 3 of them, and they are extremely robust, and they are extremely strong. Now, I have not used them for like a bow drill or anything like that, but I have tied up a ridge line with them, or a ridge pole to make my own shelter out of, and I used that natural cordage instead of nylon bank line or the paracord. But you can use any kind of material to make you natural cordage. Another one that I've used before is the inner bark of a willow tree. Now, it's easier to get the bark off in the spring of a willow than it is in the summer. In the summer times, I don't know how it works. It's like it's got more fluids running through it in the beginning. In the spring, it's got more water coming up there, the more fluids or whatever, and it's easier to get to the inner bark. But so what I did is I did it 2 different ways. I watched a YouTube video of this gentleman over in England, or I think he was over in England, the United Kingdom, somewhere over there, where he said that you take the inner bark of the willow and then you put ash from hardwood fire ash, and I'm assuming you needed the lye, but you take the ashes and you boil all the inner bark of the willow tree in that ash water, and then you take that out, and then once it's done, it changes the color of the willow bark to a reddish color, and then you hang it up, let it dry. And then once it dries, then you start making your small fibers out of that bark, and then you start weaving your bark together. Or you're doing the reverse wrap and twist method there to start your cordage. And before you know it, you got 10, 15 feet, 20 feet of cordage. And I did it with that. I made an entire belt. What I did is I weave the cordage together, weave the cordage, and then I took and I braided them. And then made a belt like that. It was pretty cool. And so I did a loop on one end and a knot on the other, pull it around, pull the knot through the loop. And it did pretty good. And I still got it to this day. Matter of fact, I wish I'd have brought it in here for the people watching the video, and I could have demonstrated it. But anyway, cordage is something that you have to have when you go into the woods, because you're always going to need to make something. You're always going to need to have something, made out of cordage. You're always going to be making it other tools and other conveniences. You're going to have to hang ridge lines. You're going to have to tie things and, make things with it. And so cordage is very important. And also cordage is something that you're going to need for fishing if you don't have any fishing string or any woven or nylon or what do they call it? Monofilament for fishing. You can always use some kind of cordage like this for fishing and catching fish. But anyway, cordage is important to have with you, always have. And like I said, you get more bang for the buck with the bank line instead of the paracord. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And for you guys, if you are listening to this podcast, go ahead and hit the like button and follow on whatever platform you're listening to. And if you're watching, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're watching. If you're listening to this, all these podcast videos are available on YouTube and usually in the Bushcraft Facebook group. I'll post all the videos of this podcast into the Primitive Camping and Bushcraft group on Facebook. So I really thank you so much for following along. I thank you so much for coming in and joining me. And I will see you in the next video or the next podcast. God bless you.